Hi, we're continuing with Found. When we left off with Found, we were kind of at an impasse. So it looked like JB and Mr. Hodge were having an argument. Argument was really vague for Jonah. He didn't quite understand what was happening. All of a sudden, Angela Dupre comes out and tasers Gary and Mr. Hodge, who are now tied up on the ground. And Jonah went to go help JB, but something about it felt funny, and he was holding this thing called an elucidator in his hand and refused to turn it over to JB, instead pointing it at him. That's where we left off, chapter 29. Angela, JB called the taser. Instantly, Jonah saw his mistake. In a second, Angela would turn around and aim her taser at him, and then they'd just reenact that scene from a few moments ago. Except this time it would be Jonah on the floor, writhing and passing out, and then JB scooping up that fallen elucidator. And then what would happen? Jonah didn't know, but he could still hear Mr. Hodges' words echoing in his brain. He said, I can't believe they think that you're on their side. You must not have told them what you want to do. What did that mean? What should Jonah do? Was there anyone that he could trust? But that was one question he knew the answer to. Catherine, he called. Catch. He tossed the elucidator in the air, an easy toss, easier than passing a basketball. He knew without turning that Catherine could catch it, and that she would hold it tightly, and that she wouldn't betray him. She might make fun of him, she might roll her eyes, she might call him an idiot, but she would never let it go. She's always proven she was there for him. As soon as the elucidator was in the air, Jonah took off running. JB made no attempt to stop him because he was spinning around, following the arc of the elucidator. So Jonah had a clean, fast sprint to the back of the cave. He needed the speed. He needed the element of surprise if he had any prayer of wresting that taser out of Angela's hand before she aimed it at him. But he was too late. Even in the dimness of the back of the cave, Jonah could see that Angela had already turned around. In one smooth, quick move, she pulled a cartridge from her pocket, reloaded the taser, and pointed it back at Jonah. Jonah took a stumbling step to the side, just in case he had a chance of dodging the laser light and the barbs and whatever else the taser was going to send zinging at him. He really hoped it wouldn't hurt too badly. He hoped he wouldn't scream as loudly as Gary and Mr. Hodge had. He hoped, but Angela was holding that taser steady, aiming past Jonah, aiming at Mr. Hodge and Gary. Shoot Jonah, JB was yelling helpfully. Thanks a lot, Jonah thought. He didn't have any hope now. He was too close to Angela, too close to reverse his course, too close for her to miss him. Just as soon as she corrected her aim and squeezed the trigger, he would be on the ground. Angela spun towards Jonah, but she didn't squeeze the trigger. She stepped forward and glanced out towards the brighter part of the cave, although that made no sense. Surely Jonah was blocking her view. She turned the taser sideways, not pointing it at anyone anymore. Then she reached over and she put the taser in Jonah's grasp. She was handing over her weapon. What? Jonah demanded, dumbfounded. Angela pressed her fingers to her lips, and then she moved the finger and began to scream. No, you can't have it. Jonah's ears were reverberating with all that lung power released in such a small space, but already Angela was expecting him to just listen. She leaned in close and whispered, I am really on your side, completely on your side. You deserve to know the truth, so you're going to have to pretend you captured me. Jonah just stood there. He was so stunned he almost dropped the taser. Maybe you should shout something about getting ropes, Angela whispered, bending down to pick up the looped coils on the floor of the cave. Move it! Get those ropes now, Jonah hollered. His voice cracked. Surely that couldn't be a convincing yell for anyone. But Jonah could hear JB calling from the lighter part of the cave. Angela, what happened? Before breaking off to warn Catherine, young lady, really don't press any of those buttons. You do not know what they do. What's going on? Jonah hissed at Angela. Tell me. She grimaced. There isn't time to talk. Besides, you should hear it from the experts, not me. She nudged him. Go on. Jonah started to back out of the darkness. Angela said. She stepped out in front of him and put her hands up over his so that the taser was pressed right into her ribcage. Please don't set that off. You are too close, she whispered. But please make it look like you captured me. Angela, JB called again, even sounding more worried. Angela dropped her hand from the taser, and together, Jonah and Angela stepped out into the light. He got your weapon? JB asked incredulously. He overpowered you? He's a strong young man, Angela said defensively. He's stronger than he looks. Well, that was an insult, wasn't it? Either way, Jonah dug the taser more deeply into Angela's ribs. He shoved her forward, more roughly than he had even intended. Maybe not so quite realistic, she muttered to him. Give the ropes to Chip, Jonah ordered. Jonah, I am not a Boy Scout, Chip said. My dad said he didn't have time for campouts, so I know nothing about tying knots. Here, Jonah said, slapping the taser into Chip's hands. Shoot her if you have to. Anguish spread over Angela's face. Jonah could tell she wasn't acting now because Chip was actually holding the taser, and there was no way that Jonah could signal Chip to let him know that she was really on their side without JB seeing it. Jonah tied Mr. Hodges and Gary's wrists and ankles. They lay calmly now, their eyes half closed. Jonah couldn't tell if they were dazed or faking it or biding their time, so he tied the knots as quickly as he could. He walked towards JB, the ropes dangling from his hands. Not me too, JB said with a grin. I think you've gotten confused. Remember, I'm the one trying to save you all. What are you saving us from? Jonah asked with a dull voice. What were you saving us for? Tell your sister to give me the elucidator and I'll just explain, JB said. Explain and maybe we'll decide you need the elucidator, Jonah said. He looped the ropes around JB's wrists and tied his firmest knot yet. JB didn't resist at all. Then Jonah tied JB's ankles and Angela's ankles and wrists. Somebody was sniffing behind him. Oh, please, it was Ming, the girl who had temporarily been a human shield. Just open the door and let us go to our parents. My cell phone isn't working. I've been trying and trying to call the police. Once we're out of the cave, I'm sure it will work right. Jonah never even thought about cell phones, but now he noticed that every kid pretty much had theirs out. One boy by the back bench kept stabbing his finger at his phone 3 times, waiting and waiting and waiting. 911, of course, Jonah thought. His knees almost gave away at the thought of a bunch of police officers in dark uniforms swarming the cave to save them all, saving Jonah from having to make any more decisions or make any more mistakes. Jonah realized the reason the boy kept stabbing the phone, though, was that none of the calls were going through. Sure, he told Ming, you find a way to open that door and we're all out of here. No, don't, JB shouted. Oh, let them try, Gary said groggily from the ground. There's a keypad by the entranceway. The code is 21ST. Is this a trick? Jonah turned towards JB. What will happen if we try that code, if we open the door, he demanded. You'll see, you'll find out too much all at once, JB said. It's going to scare you. It might scare us? After everything that's already happened, JB is worried about scaring us? Jonah decided to take his chances. He rushed through the entranceway. It was as if he had become the Pied Piper now. Most of the other kids were shoving behind him. His fingers shook as he pressed in 21ST. An image was growing in his mind of what he might see when that door slid back. Maybe Gary and Mr. Hodge had already slipped them into the future. They'd step out of the cave and the trees would be gone and the newly built houses would be ancient and falling down. That would be scary, but Jonah braced himself for it. The door began moving, slowly this time, as if it was like an ancient boulder covered with thousands of years of moss. As soon as there was a crack between the door and the wall, Jonah darted towards it, peeking out. That's when he peeked out and he saw nothing. And we'll stop there.